This is the Wait Just an Infosec podcast, your weekly opportunity to tap into the minds of some of the world's foremost cybersecurity experts. Wait Just an Infosec is a weekly show live streamed on SANS Institute social media channels on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. The show features a wide range of guests from across the Infosec community. Whether we're diving into the weeds of the latest data breach or exploring the security implications of groundbreaking technology such as generative AI, each episode brings you new insight to keep you engaged in the industry, feed your fire for knowledge, and amplify your value as an Infosec practitioner. Join the SANS community and gain free access to cutting-edge industry news, cybersecurity resources like technical research, and tools that can't be found elsewhere. Subscribe for free today at sans.org/join.
All right, so if you're looking for somewhere both fun and warm to go to in February, New Orleans is a fantastic location. One of my favorite things about New Orleans is the food. It has very unique, and if you like spicy, New Orleans is for you. All right, folks, what I'd like to do now is introduce our guest speakers. We have both Mina and Russell joining us. They are two of what I would consider some of SANS' most experienced instructors, especially on the leadership side. Now, I'm going to have each one of them introduce themselves in just a moment. But first, I want to give you some context of why we are here and really why should you care? How can what we're going to talk about benefit you? We've all heard the triad of cybersecurity, the triad or the foundation being people, process, and technology. And we've got to make sure that we focus on all three. Sometimes we overemphasize one area without worrying about emphasizing the other two. But the other challenge is this: how can we approach each of those tiers, people, process, and technology, but from a leadership perspective? And that's what the SANS Transformational Leadership Triad is all about. From a cybersecurity perspective, how can we prepare future cybersecurity leaders from the people, technology, and process perspective? And that's what each one of us will be talking about. So the SANS Triad is SANS' three most senior leadership courses: 512, 514, and 521. SANS 512 focuses on technology, but from the leadership perspective. 514 focuses on policy and strategy from the leadership perspective. And SANS Leadership 521 focuses on the people or the culture side, but once again, from the leadership perspective. So if you're brand new to cybersecurity, this triad is not for you. There's a huge number of other fantastic science courses to really get you up to speed. But a lot of these courses, you really need at least 3 to 5 years of experience in cybersecurity before you even begin to consider one of these. So once again, you have that triad: technology, process, people. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask Mina. We're going to start with Mina, and she is going to go ahead and introduce both herself. Mina, be sure to share a little bit of your background also, but she is one of the world's expert on the Leadership 512 course, which focuses on leadership, managing all of the different technologies. So Mina, if you could just briefly introduce us what you and 512 are all about.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everybody. My name is Mina Nguyen. And Lance, thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself and about 512, which I'm really excited about and have been for years. So a little bit about myself, a little bit background. Actually, this year marks my second decade in cybersecurity. I started in IT and then got into cybersecurity in 2003. So I started in cybersecurity with the federal government. Going from the federal government, I grew in an immediate, pretty much promotion to start managing the cybersecurity program. And as I started the cybersecurity program, I grew the organization and the need with the organization by aligning with our mission and understanding the mission. No longer was it a focus for us to just be big brother and just focusing on fraud, waste, and abuse, but it was really protecting the organizations and our enterprises' data and assets. And so with that focus, I was able to increase, double, triple our organization. And I was going through that about 4 or 5 years later on. During that time, I was getting a lot of management and leadership training. I was tapped on the shoulders by another organization to help reprogram the National Laboratory in Los Alamos and help them strategize on developing that. So I started my consulting career about 15 years ago. This year marks 15 years ago when I started my consultancy career. And then later on, decided to open up my own consultancy and government contracting company. We're a small woman-owned AA that helps a lot of organizations. So that gives me perspective. One, it gives me perspective of organizations internally and organizations that are from various different industries, public, private sector, to include federal government. So with my experience, I see a lot of various things. Like Lance said, the people, process, technology. And so in 512, we go through a lot of various things. I think about implications because if you think about these various components, have you ever felt like you're just chasing down one initiative after another? I mean, many of us are looking at zero trust architecture. Many of us are looking at how we can implement single sign-on with Okta, yet have those insecurities that we are worried about and the risk that comes along with it, yet also talk to management about risk. And what is risk all about? It has us looking at like vulnerabilities and the threat vectors that those vulnerabilities are. So then as a threat vector, we have to understand all those various things and all those threat actors and their activities and the likelihood and all these various things all require us to look at across the board with all the various technology and the foundational components to it. So in 512, I so much hope that everyone would really get involved with the understanding of the technology, the people, and the process side, because technology could be easy, but badly implemented, which just take away with all security that we've talked about and we look at with regards to everything. So I asked you all if you've ever felt that. Have you ever felt that you're pretty much somebody who's just going from one initiative to another? And if you are, imagine, and let me take you down to kind of like a imaginary road with me with regards to an analogy. It's like we are in this subway, and in this subway, we have to take all these different paths. And these different paths would be like our different routes that we have to take. And as we take these different paths, we have to map what's most efficient, what we can afford from a resource perspective. And all of those ideally would take us to the end destination, right? So does that kind of resonate with anybody? What do you think? Have that feeling that you're kind of like in the subway, having all these different initiatives, but you have to take a path that gets you on that subway or that train to that path. And you have to consider the costs. You have to consider the route. Is that route where you can go? Are you ready for it as an organization and enterprise going there? And all these various routes, maybe you have to take all routes to get to the same destination, but you have the money for it. And in addition to that, while you're doing that, while you're standing there mapping out the route, which requires you to know the technology, right? You have to know the maps, you have to know the routes. But you're being chased or worried about the security of yourself while you're there. There's muggers, there's some shady individuals around. And not only do you have to worry about that, but if you select a certain train, is that train too fast for you to be able to protect yourself at the level that you are feeling right now? Or do you have the resource to do so? All of that takes in so much different processing that we have to do in our mind. And so I don't know if you can resonate at all of being that person that just sitting in that train station, looking at all the different routes and trying to get to that destination. We ideally would have you kind of think about that, resonate a little bit. And then for me, I like to kind of hit on the technology side and see all the implications with regards to that. So all the things with, for example, you jump on the train for zero trust architecture, which requires you to think about encrypting everything. Well, how do you have this encrypt everything but verify everything? How do I encrypt something how do I inspect or monitor something that's encrypted? I have to decrypt it. Then it has a lot of implications about keys and all these various things that comes along with it. So that's what we talk about in 512. And I would so hope that you can come along with me, whether you are an existing leader, executive, or manager at this time. It's a great way to understand all these various things because we jump on all these initiatives or we continue on implementing these initiatives, and initiatives can be ineffective if we implement it incorrectly. Because like Lance has mentioned, it's about the people, the process, and technology. And as mentioned earlier, like Okta, the people side, unintentionally, we don't harvest that and hone that in and really nurture and mature it, you will unfortunately bypass all the great work that you've done from a technology perspective. So we talk about that in 512. We talk things about like culture-wise of how even to do process from Sec DevOps to understanding frameworks and what frameworks to select from. Again, helping you understand which path to take. So I hope I didn't take too long, Lance, but that I was just so super excited about that. And everyone, I hope that you could kind of think with me if that doesn't work for you as an analogy. If you have one that helps me kind of resonate with you, that'd be great to hear as well.
So, Meenap, I think what would help me is if we take a step back and instead of an analogy, what areas do you cover in the class? So, for example, as a leader, we tend to have a lot of comfort level, a lot of experience in certain areas, certain technologies like SOC, DevSecOps, cloud, incident response. But we may not have that background and expertise in other areas of technology. So if you could just at a high level, what areas of technology do you cover in the class and what can students get away from that?
Yes, sure. Thanks for asking, Lance. So I would tell you all those that Lance said, we cover all of that. We cover a management and leadership perspective from a cloud security to network security to host security, all the way to SOC and incident response. And the key and the reason why is that we have a need for us to cover what we call the foundational components. And I like to say this, and I say this in my class a lot. If you think about it as executives, leaders, we have to work at this level that, and sorry, I'm going to go back to analogy. It's kind of like doing calculus and math. But as you're developing your equation and figuring out how to solve that equation, you still have to understand the foundational components, like the order of operations to exponents, probabilities, and all these other stuff, because all those fits into the overall equations. So we cover that technology to make sure that we talk about those things. We spend time on networking, for example, for those who have been in IT and cyber for decades, like myself. It's a great refresher because despite us having to go beyond that, we use our calculators, right? That we still have to understand how the order of process and procedure works so that we can get the overall equation correct. Because unlike math, where back in the days I would get half credit by showing my work, in the business world, you get the equation wrong and you spend millions in a project and you got it wrong, you don't get half credit. So that's what we go and spend through. So we talk about things like the network security, cryptography, how even cryptography, current state of the art, how that could get bypassed with just even bad implementation. And we cover some of those things. We talk about emerging technologies like blockchain. And we also talk about like quantum computing, all those various things so that we can better integrate and align to initiatives that everyone is looking at, as well as organizational goals and enterprises goals.
So is it more a technical deep dive into each of these domains, or is it more of a high level leadership management perspective and how it aligns with certain frameworks?
For the foundational, it's a deep dive in certain areas, like from networking, crypto, and also in Sec DevOps. On other areas, it's kind of a high level. We summarize things that are key components that are there so that you can crossovers to certain things. So when we talk about cloud, we are able to take over on the cloud security because we have good foundational refresher or understanding of the network and cryptography, so we can apply it to the cloud because it's all the same. And so we make those connections. We connect the dots. So I think you can say like there are certain areas that we deep dive in, and then we connect the dots so that when we get to a higher level, like in the cloud, we can actually pull that thread, connect those dots because we got that refresher. Or for those who are new in IT and cybersecurity, who've just rocked and rolled with regards to the mission and business side, can now understand all those things and connect it to the newer technology. And then like we go over to like, for example, zero trust as well, like zero trust architecture and frameworks.
So it sounds like one of the big values of the course is you have all these different technologies as a leader that you're going to be responsible for: SOC, DevSecOps, cloud, networking, host, EDR. It's how to bring it all together and how to manage it and how they all interconnect and relate with each other.
That's correct.
All right. Fantastic. All right, Meenap, thank you so much. Folks, we're going to hand this off now to Russell. Russell handles the 514 course. This is very much on strategy and process. And it's sometimes, if I'm correct, Russell, it's called the CISO course.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mina, I tell you, I was inspired. I'll never look at a subway the same way again, thanks to the way you described that. It's amazing to work with both of y'all. I think so much of y'all, and I'll never forget, Mina, actually, one time you sat in this class, and I'm like, holy cow, talk about intimidation. Someone of your caliber, your skill, and the things you've achieved, and it's like, wow, we should switch roles. But anyway, so, hey, Russell Eubanks, great to be here. And I have to say, I'm a product of SANS. I mean, honestly, 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, I signed up for my annual training, the SANS class. I'll do that. I'll hang out and see things. And honestly, before lunch on the first day, I was in over my head. It was more than I could handle. And I decided to, optionally do the certification, get good at that, and year over year, take an A class and get a cert and just build upon that. And to be able to, for the last 13 years, be an instructor with SANS, author the last couple of years with SANS, is just, well, I promise you, just never thought I'd have this opportunity. But as Lance said, with 514, this idea of how to be a better CISO. 20 years ago, I was a security analyst. 20 years ago, working in healthcare, and then moved to Atlanta 13 years ago to work at a major telecom company. And back in 2015, worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. You've probably heard of them. Like when you see your dollars, it's that same place. And I was privileged to be the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer of very, very large, important central bank here in the U.S. And so many times I would go back to my SANS books. And if I was at home, I could point to all the books I've taken for all the years. And it just that reference, put my fingers on answers to problems that I'm facing in a day-to-day basis. It has served me extraordinarily well. And, at the Fed, leading people that lead people that lead people that do the hands-on keyboard, that do the technologies, that decide for incredibly important financial systems and financial networks to watch and observe and apply the principles and be on guard to help lead, motivate, and inspire those people to be able to do that. And they even turned me into a CIO. It was not on my vision board. It wasn't one of the things that I wanted to do, but they said, hey, Russell, you've been successful as a CISO here. Would you be willing to serve and lead all of IT and lead all of cyber? And it was a great privilege to do that for over 5.5 years. And the thing that helped me the most with that was to understand, not just from head knowledge, information, but just like with the SANS promise, you can apply what you learn as soon as you get back to your day job, having that application. An application which leads to transformation, transforming the culture of the team, transforming the way the people who walk into the building that work for your team, that you're privileged to lead, are able to see the connections of how what they do matters, how what they do is important, how what they do helps the central bank of the U.S. Be true to its mission, and also ensure that there's minimal, if no, problems and challenges by focusing on the right things at the right time. And it was just so amazing to do that. Back in 2020, it literally, it's funny, those of you know me, the week that the 2020 things happened, went to my boss and said, hey, boss, I think today's a great day to quit my super stable job at a very important place. Just career highlights there for sure, and start my own business. Over the last 3.5 years, been running my company named Security Ever After, where I get to teach a whole lot more because of that. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to teach about once a month with SANS, a couple of classes, and then help companies who've lost their CISO. If you believe the internet, if you believe the reports, tenure of a CISO is about plus or minus 3 years. And typically what I've seen, as a matter of fact, when they recruited me to go to the Fed, it took over a year. They talked to me for a year, metaphorically and literally twisting my arm. Finally, I said yes. But during that time, there was a gap. The company didn't have a CISO. They didn't have a senior exec. Someone found a better opportunity. Good for them. And waiting almost a year to find the right person, make sure it's a good culture fit, make sure they're qualified to serve in that capacity. So the company's struggling, but then also the team. Wow, the senior most cybersecurity executive is gone. What does that mean for me? Should I go? Should I stay? And so many challenges, so many issues there, both from the company's perspective and the team's perspective. And so coming in and doing some immediate work, being able to help assess, stabilize, and improve, and oftentimes even interviewing potential CISOs for other companies as they're wanting to come in and assume those duties. I can't tell you what a great privilege that has been to do that. And when I say I'm a product of SANS, all the classes, all the certifications, all the opportunities and privileges I've had, taking the material from SANS Management 514, it's a playbook. SANS doesn't call it how to be a CISO, but Russell calls it how to be a CISO. And it's not just head knowledge, it's things where I refer to those topics. Just last week, I was privileged to lead a very large class, hybrid class, people in the room, people literally around the world engaging for saying, how can they be an even more efficient and an effective leader? And so many topics that were in there, things like looking at historical analysis. Why is the company there? When the founders, when the creators of an organization said, hey, let's go make a company, why do they do it? What's the mission? What's the thing that they're trying to achieve? And it's good to know that. What's the vision? Why do they do the things they do? What they want to be when they grow up for their company's perspective? And understanding that so that first the leader, first the CISO, or the senior person in cybersecurity for an organization, so they could know that and for themselves say, how do we contribute? You think of the company TED, like TED the company, TED Talks. One of these days, I think it'd be cool to do a TED Talk. But TED, the company, has a mission statement. There's a reason why they exist, and it is to spread ideas. If you're working at TED, the company, you know that their mission is to spread ideas. And we can judge, we can say, hey, how good do they do that? But let's just imagine for a second that we were all somehow magically teleported on Meetup Subway to the place where we're CISO, we're the leader of cybersecurity at TED, the company. We could think that we're there to stop APT, to do strategic plans, to do a roadmap, to align to the cybersecurity framework, all topics that are covered in depth in Management 514. But that's not really why we're there. We're there to spread ideas. And the way, the how that we do that is by looking and worrying about APT, by looking at compliance, by worrying about auditors, by worrying all the things we worry about. But the real reason that we're there, if we were to be senior leaders of cyber at TED, the company, is to spread ideas. That's why the company exists. I've never worked for a company that exists because of cybersecurity. But I have worked at places where cyber was a very top risk, perhaps the top risk. I remember when I was privileged to be a CISO at the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, my leader, my immediate boss said, when I was going to go brief all the officers in the bank on a monthly basis of the risk of cyber, she would occasionally say, and I'm just working with Marie so much, she would make this statement. I chose to say it was rhetorical. I never answered her question, but she would occasionally ask the question, if cyber is a top risk, and of course it was, what are we doing to treat it that way? See, it's easy to be busy. If I can see your calendar, if you can see my calendar, we'd all feel sorry for each other. We'd want a group hug because it's like easy to be busy. What's hard is to decide on priorities and to say, here's the most important thing. Here's the second most important thing. Here's the third most important thing. And thing that's important, that's number 192, I can't afford to work on that. Because I know at the end of the year, my boss, my leader, my manager, the chair of the board, the chair of the audit committee, people that are important to me, they want to see not were you busy, but were you working on things that made a material impact? Were you doing things that were aligned to the business? I'm an eternal optimist. You probably picked up on that the last few minutes. I've got this idea that on a balance sheet of a company, you got assets and you got liabilities. Right now, cyber is largely a cost center, right? We spend money. When we get $1 million to work on our security budget, or we get $10 million to work on our security budget, that means product and marketing and sales and salaries don't get that same $10 million. I've got this idea, I've got this hope, I've got this aspirational identity where we in cyber can actually move from being a liability to move to being an asset? How can we in cyber do the things that we're doing, align to the business, helping the company be all it can be? What if we could help the company go further and go faster? For me, that's so key, by aligning to frameworks, by understanding where the company's being, by casting vision for where should we go that's consistent with mission, vision, values of the company to help to let the company get there. I think is a very important topic to help us be, again, not be busy, but work on things that matter the most. Talk also about security policies. I mean, I opened up day three of class literally last week in Austin, Texas. And I said, hey, if you love policy, I want you to love policy more as a result of spending a whole day on policy. And if you hate policy, I want you to hate a little bit less. Not because it's something that we have to do, but think about the power. Think about, Meenat mentioned some analogies. I use the analogy of policies like guardrails. When I'm driving on my vehicle and I'm going down the highway and there's this cliff, I'm glad there's a guardrail there, because if there wasn't, worse things could happen. What if we think of policies that way, as guardrails to protect the employee, to protect the company, and make it clear? Oh, that's what's allowed. I can or can't plug that thing in. I can or cannot, as Lance mentioned at the opening. Is it okay to go to my personal email on my corporate device? I imagine a lot of us are rethinking that right now to say, is that risk still worth it? To be able to understand what policies, procedures, standards, baselines, guidelines, that package that we can use to serve as guardrails to give guidance so that we can follow that. And then day 4 is around leadership. How can I not just be a manager? And we need managers. How can I just not be a boss? And honestly, nobody woke up today wanting to be bossed around. Not me, not Lance, not Meena, not Steve. Nobody all woke up wanting to be a boss. But instead, we want to be inspired. We want to be led. We want to be the boss that the Russell from 5 years ago wish he had. How can we do that on purpose? To lead people that are very technical, very hands-on, very acutely aware of the risks they're facing, but oftentimes being able to communicate that to our seniors, to our leaders, to our board, to our committees is a skill that we need to learn how to develop, to literally be able to speak a second language. Not French, German, Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch, but the language of business, understanding why the business does what it does, understanding, can the company afford my $10 million business case for next year, if that's what we're working with, so that we can help the company go further and go faster. You can see I've kind of got into teacher mode a little bit. I love how thinking about these topics, not just saying here's something academic, but from a practical way. I've honestly built my company, Secured Ever After, around applying so many of the concepts that are inside and built into SANS Management 514. So I need to slow down, but I could talk about it for a while. But what it is, what it's done for me, and what I've seen it do for students. You get promotions, get raises, get opportunities, brief the board, get invited to come back and brief the board again. It's just so many success stories that one of the instructors of this class, has been able to hear on a ongoing basis. Just really ignites and excites me.
So, Russell, it sounds like the class is less about risk management and cybersecurity and more about getting your MBA, Master's in Business, and how to speak to leadership in business terms.
That's so true. And I know, Lance, you got your MBA. I think that's pretty awesome. I had a student in my class last week from a very prestigious company, been in business for a long time, has an MBA. And he's like, I covered these things in MBA school. And I believe him, and I believe you. I don't have one. I can't relate to that. But so much of it is in that condensed, concentrated format to understand what's most important and to be able to effectively communicate with stories, analogies, or ways to let business leaders make a better risk decision. I've learned the hard way that when my job is to advise and when my job is to guide and help business leaders who are busy running big enterprises, big companies, helping them make a better risk-based decision of, do they spend the dollar in cyber? Do they spend the dollar somewhere else? I can feel an integrity with myself. I can feel that I've very well represented the teams I've been privileged to lead by making it easier for them, not dumbing it down, but making it easier for them to make a better risk-informed decision. To me, that's the win. Sure, I want a lot of money in cyber. Sure, I want a lot of people in cyber. But when decision makers make a better, more risk-informed decision, I feel like we, as effective cybersecurity leaders, security executives, have done our job, and I could not have said it better myself, Lance.
So if I can recap, folks, so what we have first is Meenat. She covered Leadership 512, and that's all about, hey, as a leader, you're going to be expected to manage a lot of different technologies and make sure they align and work together. Russell just covered Leadership 514 and said, also as a leader, you're going to be expected to be able to speak to executives in their terms. How often have we in the security world said, I wish they would listen to us? Well, they will listen to us, but we need to speak their language. So Leadership 514 is all about speaking the language of business and how to translate what you're doing in terms that they care about. Remember, Russell talked about aligning with the organization's mission. So I'm going to go ahead and close the loop on this triad, and that's on the human or the people side. So a couple of interesting things. All 3 courses are 5 days long. All 3 courses are extremely interactive with team-based labs and team-based case studies. All 3 courses have a capstone on the 5th day where you align and apply everything you've learned, and you compete as teams for coins. In fact, I'll be showing the course coins here in just a moment. But finally, what is Leadership 521 all about? That's the Security Culture for Leaders course. This 5-day course helps enable you as a leader to help not only secure your workforce in their behaviors, but really create a strong security culture that you can measure. A lot of leaders now are throwing the term around security culture. What do we mean by security culture? How do we build it? And how do we measure it? And really, that's what this 5-day course is all about. The security culture course shows you what are the biggest drivers of your security culture, your security team, security policies, security training. How do we build a roadmap leveraging those drivers to build that strong security culture? And we even take a step back. What does it mean to you to have a strong security culture? What's your definition of that? How do you achieve it? How do you measure it? How do you quantify a strong security culture? Example, one of my favorite indicators of a strong security culture is this. Your workforce feels safe reporting an incident, even when they know they caused it. Just one of the many key takeaways and lessons learned as a leader. We hear this term security culture a lot. What does it mean? Why do we care? How do we define it? How do we measure it? How do we achieve it? And that's everything you're going to learn in this 5-day course, to include a large number of team-based interactive labs. And the reason all 3 courses are very team-based is all 3 courses are designed for more senior students. So you're not only learning from the instructor in the course material, you're learning from your peers in those team labs, because everyone brings a lot of experience, skills, and perspective. So you're learning from each other also. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. But Stephen, if you could please, can you post that image right here? So what's really neat is, like I said, all 3 courses, 5 days. All 3 courses very senior focused, but all 3 courses have a competition on the 5th day, a capstone or a capture the flag, you can call it. And in each class, break down into teams, and the teams compete to see who can win. So for example, in the security culture course, who can build the strongest culture? And each course, the winning team, all the members get a coin that you can collect. In addition, if you take all 3 courses and successfully complete all 3 courses, you're actually presented a transformational triad coin. But for that, you have to complete all 3 courses. And once again, just to take a step back from where we started, the whole idea of this transformational triad maps to the foundation of cybersecurity: people, process, and technology. It's just that all three courses do that from a very senior leadership perspective. It's not about the bits and bytes. It's about managing those bits and bytes, how they align with your organization's mission, and how that technology and people interact, and how do we ensure that those technology, processes, and people are all aligned and working together from a very secure perspective. All right, I'm going to wrap things up here. But first, Meenap, anything else you would like to add?
Well, I do want to add something that we touch on with regards to 512 that I hope that you all can come along with me, is that in each area of technology that we look at, we touch on what Lance was saying with the people, process, technology. We also look at maturity. And so that we look at various maturity models, but just down to the root of it, we look to see how we can effectively be better at slowing ourselves down, learning how to crawl, then walk, then run, and then sprint, and then go full speed ahead. So when we look at all these various things, I think these three classes can help us in so many ways as we go through that path of maturity ourselves. So I hope that I see many of you in the class, if not all, that has tuned in. Thank you for the time, Lance and Russell, to be part of the panel and talk to you all about the class here. And I feel really honored to be sharing the camera with Russell and Lance. So thank you.
Meenap, I forgot. You told me last time when we were at a SANS event, but how do one say thank you in Vietnamese?
Oh, it's Gamong.
Gamong. All right. So Gamong, Meenap, thank you so much. Russell, anything else you would like to add?
Two quick things. One, raise your hand if you had a bad boss, not presently, but in the past. Of course we have. And we know how they made their leadership, their management made us feel. It's like, you know what? I promise to never be that way again. Think of the you when you had a bad boss, and don't be that. Don't do all the bad things, but then collect some things where you can be an amazing leader worth following. The truth is, when we're leaders, when we're in that position, the privilege to lead other teams, at the dinner table of people that we're privileged to lead, your name comes up. People that you'll never know, spouses, partners, friends, pets, neighbors, they're going to hear your name. What is it that you want them to say? By investing in yourself and investing in the team you're privileged to lead, you can help that conversation be much more formidable, much more hospitable than what it probably is right now. And when you decide to do that on purpose. And then second, final thing, for me, the best advice I've ever been given, I say this every time I speak, is this. It came to me from someone who has nothing to do with cyber, nothing to do with technology, and it's this: get wisdom as cheaply as we can. Get wisdom as cheaply as we can. What does that mean? What lessons can I learn from other security leaders? What other lessons can I learn from sharing stories from people in the classroom or on connecting on LinkedIn? So I'd love to connect with everybody on LinkedIn. This idea of what am I learning and how can that learning not just be constrained to me, but for anyone who wants to not have that same mistake or not have that same pain, or perhaps even be able to share things that are working and are useful for those who are privileged to lead. So those are my two hopeful good takeaways. Back to you, Lance.
No, Russell, I love how you wrap things up. We've all been in that position. Gosh, if only I was the boss, I wouldn't be making those mistakes. Why are they so toxic? Why do we keep, rewarding the bad people? Why don't they speak the mission, align with the all that stuff? Well, that's what these three courses are all about, to help you become the best and most effective leader possible. And folks, the whole idea of these three courses is this. It's not just about the security program, how you can build the most effective security program as a leader. All three courses are very focused on your growth and your career and how you can personally benefit also. So it's not just the program, but it's all about you. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I'm going to go ahead and ask Stephen and team if they can post my email address. So my email address, folks, is lance.spitzner@sans.org. If you have any questions about anything we've covered, please reach out to me. Meenap or Russell, we love hearing from you. Otherwise, Russell, Meenap, once again, thank you so much. Folks, catch you in cyberspace. Be safe out there.
Thank you for listening to the Wait Just an Infosec podcast. Remember to join us live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern for a new episode of Wait Just an Infosec. You can watch at sans.org/WJAI or go to the SANS LinkedIn or YouTube channels. The Wait Just an Infosec podcast will be released every Wednesday at noon. Thanks for listening. See you next week.